in the form of thesis or report. So in the previous class, we discussed about research methods and methodology and what are the differences between them and comparative study of the two. And today's class will discuss about the guidelines for research process. Now, how exactly you begin, what is the starting point and what is the end point, plus in between them, what are the steps involved in this. So there are around 10 to 12 steps. Now, depending upon the work, they can be few more steps, or you can reduce them, combine some 2-3 steps into single one. So first step is formulating the research problem. So this is in our usual terms, defining the research problem. Once you define the research problem, then comes your literature survey. So you survey the content what is available or the work what is done so far. That is your literature survey. Then developing the hypothesis on the basis of the literature survey and the problem what you have defined, you develop a hypothesis like what exactly you are going to test for. Then design your research, like which tools, which methods you are going to work with. So around that, design the research. Then naturally any research you need to have some samples. You need to have some data collected. So in the determining the sample design and collection of the data, you are going to collect the data and what type of the data sampling you are going to do. There are different techniques of sampling and there are different types of collecting the data, and again sampling also how you collect the data. So there are different ways in which the samples can be taken, like it is pertaining to one class of the society or collecting the data from different classes of the society which represent each mass or each walk of life, how the people are coming, like that. From each walk of life, one sample if you take or 5 samples you take, on the basis of that you determine the sample design and also accordingly collect the data. Once you collect the data and decide upon the method, then execution of that. So after you execute, what results you get? You are going to analyze the data. Then depending upon the analysis and whatever hypothesis you have set, you are going to test the hypothesis and then come out with certain conclusions or the results. So these fall under execution of the project, analysis of the data, then testing of that data, then generalization and interpretation of that data. Because you have started with one research problem, collected data accordingly, samples are taken, then now you want to give the conclusion or you want to represent that whatever research work in a manner such that it is applicable to certain masses or the entire population. So whether you are going to generalize it for the entire mass or how exactly you are going to interpret the data on the basis of whatever work and the methods you have applied. The final one is preparation of the report or presentation of the results in front of few people or your guide or with whom you are working or to the university to which you belong, so that somebody has to certify that okay, whatever work you have carried out is correct and the methods you have employed are fine. So this is going to help the society or the problem solving whatever you are trying to do, it is going to give results for that. So some authority which is going to monitor your work and study your work, then say that okay, this work is authentic and you have done the correct job. So for the validation, you are going to put it in the form of the document and it is going to be evaluated. So the evaluation is the last procedure. After the research is carried out and presented in the form of thesis, so evaluation will be done by some certain committees. Some reviews will come. Maybe you have to modify the work, or maybe the entire work is fine, so you can present it and finally get the approval that in your name the research work will be saved. So these are the steps involved in the research process. We'll see in detail what are the intricate things involved in all these 12 steps. So the first one is formulating the research problem. So there are two types of research problems. Those which relate to states of nature and those which relate to relationships between variables. So these are the basic types of research problems. Between different variables, what are the relationships? On that basis, whatever research is carried out, or between the states of nature, you are carrying out the research. So in which category your research problem comes? So accordingly, you are going to define the research problem. Once you define it, you are going to carry out an extensive literature survey. Now, literature survey these days, it can be carried out with the help of simple browsing of the net and browsing of websites. Because these days, earlier, when this internet facility was not available to the entire mass, we had books, we had journals, we had magazines, we had libraries, and we had people, where from people we would collect the information, or even the papers and regular magazines would provide us the details. But these days, all these magazines, journals, or websites, or human resource also, you can float your survey form and you can collect the information. You need not go on site to collect the data. Otherwise, we would go on site to collect the data. If you wanted a medical data, then you would go to medical people or the doctors, take their help and collect some biomedical informations or images. If you wanted any student information, you would go to colleges and collect specific, say engineering you want, or MBA you want, or literature or arts people, commerce people, like that. Survey, the papers would be, or the questionnaire would be floated and we would collect the information. So that was the thing. But these days, for anything, you can float a survey using Google form. So from any corner of the world, you can collect the data these days. Only thing, it may take some time. So extensive data collection or even the literature survey can be done with the help of these things. Because even by floating, how many people are involved in a particular kind of a research also, you will come to know using this. So basically, the literature survey was done earlier by physical references, by referring to real books or journals. But nowadays, you can do it with the help of some good websites, or even the conference papers are available. Earlier, only attending the conferences would give us information. But nowadays, collecting the conference papers or the journals, you will be able to collect the information, or the extensive literature survey can be very easily performed. Once this research survey is performed, the concise report of what is available and what are you planning to do will be represented in the form of synopsis. So first thing a researcher, what he or she does is defines the research problem, collects the information and represents that in a small, concise way. Few pages, around 20-30 pages of information is submitted to the university. This is called synopsis, which deals with the topic, the actual area, and the title of the research plus whatever research work you are carrying out in future on the basis of the existing work. Not necessarily a clear-cut method or methodology is defined in that, but a broader overview kind of a thing about your research definition is mentioned there. So it is submitted to the university committee or the board for approval, whether this can be carried out or no, it is valid or no. Because some things, sometimes the data is very, crucial. So people don't give out the data. Under such cases, when there is no data available, such a research work cannot be carried out. There are many other reasons why the board does not approve of some researches. But after doing the extensive literature survey, the synopsis has to be submitted. The third point is development of hypothesis. Now, after the survey, researcher should state in clear terms the working hypothesis or hypothesis. Now, what does this working hypothesis means? You are going to set certain parameters or benchmarks, and your work is going to be compared with them. So there is one usual term with these MBA people do is null hypothesis. Now, what exactly this null hypothesis means? So this is not going to happen at all. Like this, no? This will never happen. Something like this they keep as null hypothesis. Then they work around it. Is it possible under this condition? Is it possible under this condition? That can this happen? So with the null hypothesis, they start comparing these things and by how much percentage a particular thing is possible. So this is hypothesis testing. So some benchmark you keep, and to that you compare your results and work around it and find out the results and come to conclusion. So this is hypothesis testing. So working hypothesis is tentative assumption made in order to draw out and test its logical or empirical consequences. So logical consequences when it is completely logical and analytical research. Empirical, when the example of again coronavirus, it is tested on, the vaccine is tested on certain number of group of people from some section, say some city. Same thing whether it is applied or no, in this next place, okay, later it will be tested. But here, so for how many people this is working out, how many people are having some side effects, and is the side effects are very serious. So all these can be drawn, assuming that, okay, this is not going to have any side effects. Then compare it. So like this, the hypothesis is tested with the, the actual results are tested with the tentative assumption or the hypothesis. The next point is preparing the research design. The research problem having been formulated in clear-cut terms, the researcher will be required to prepare a research design. That is, he will have to state the conceptual structure within which the research would be conducted. Now, why this is very important is because there are good number of methods available. Later, as you go on working further, if you don't define your own clear-cut steps and the method or methodology for that matter, you may be tempted to use or trying to include many other things. So here, always it is better to define in clear-cut terms what is going to be your method to achieve your goals or to achieve whatever problem you have defined. To achieve that work or to complete that work, what are going to be the clear-cut steps and the methods you are going to adopt in reaching that goal, and how exactly you are going to conduct that, because there are good number of different ways. Later you might realize that they are available, and is it worth deviating from your method Is it worth deviating from your line of work? So all these things have to be defined in the very first few days or few months of your research work. Only then it will take like the proper timelines and all you can really achieve. Otherwise, there are good number of ways you may get distracted too. So research purposes may be grouped into 4 categories. First one, exploration. Second, description. Third, diagnosis. And fourth, experimentation. And these 4 we have discussed in earlier classes also. So in which category your work is going to fall into? On the basis of that, you can define your own methods and tools required to achieve your goal or achieve your objectives. So there are several research designs such as experimental and non-experimental hypothesis testing. So these are basically depending upon what type of research you are planning to conduct. On the basis of that, you have hypothesis testing or null hypothesis testing or actually carrying out the experiments and then comparing with the previous work and then predicting the next portion. All these things you have to clearly define. So experimental designs can be either informal designs such as before and after without control. Say for example, again the vaccine. Before taking the vaccine, what was the immunity level, and after taking the vaccine, what is the immunity level? So these are basically experimental type. Or after taking 1 dose of vaccine, what is the immunity level? After taking both the doses, what is the immunity level? So like this, on the basis of experiments with giving control and without giving control, or with the medicine, without the medicine. So like this, whatever is conducted, they are come under this experimental type. Now the formal designs. Formal designs, you have different classes like randomized designs, or you have certain set of blocks there where these blocks define how exactly a formal way of designing can be carried out. And in some cases, some blocks are not essential, you can remove those blocks. Some steps are non-essential, so you can remove them. So out of which the researcher must select one of his own project. So whatever is suitable depending upon what type of your research is on the 4 points, whatever exploration, description, diagnosis or experimentation type. On the basis of that, you have to select particular block, select particular system and discard the other ones. So this comes under your design process. And the design process, even the next units also, we are going to deal with few steps. So the 5th one is sample design. Now sample designing, you have good number of ways of collecting the samples. Now different types of issues or the researches, different ways of samples can be collected. Now, all the items under consideration in any field of inquiry constitute a universe or population. So, entire, like we are assumed that we are restricting ourselves to a research work on Belgaum district. It could be rainfall, it could be temperature variations, it could be crops, or it could be the fruits which are available in the or grown in the vicinity, or the vegetables grown, or the flowering plants grown. When you have this, now what we do actually, if you want to see the fruits and all, first you are going to concentrate on the farmers who are growing those fruits, then the consumers also, because consumers you require to check the quality of the fruits grown, and farmers because they are the ones who are growing them. Plus the next section is the people who are supplying seeds or plants to them. So how many people are involved now in this universe or population? So at least I could identify 3 now. Like that, if you go on researching, you get many more. So these people become the samples. These people are the ones who are going to give us samples. So depending upon what type of research you are carrying out, you are going to fix, like who are going to be our samples, who are going to, or from whom we are going to collect the samples. So first, to understand this, once you know what is going to be the population or the people of interest. So next we'll see how we can collect the samples from these people. So there is what is known as deliberate sampling. So deliberate means purposefully you go and collect the data from these people on whichever questionnaire you have. Next, simple random sampling. Random sampling means just simply randomly you collect sample from people. It's like exit poll. I had given example in some this prediction type of research work. So that also comes under random sampling only. Randomly you go and ask a person, okay, whom did you vote? Or why do you prefer him or her, the candidate? So this type of sampling is also known as chance sampling or probability sampling, where each and every item in the population has an equal chance of inclusion in the sample. That means all the people, if around 100 people are around you, each one can be a probable candidate for a sample. So the next one, systematic sampling. So in some instances, the most practical way of sampling is to select every 15th member. Here in systematic sampling, what is that? If you have 100 people, you select, okay, 10. At interval of 10, you are going to collect one sample. So systematic sample. Next one is stratified sampling. Now in this, what you have, from each strata, you are going to collect one sample. That is stratified sampling. Now the next one is quota sampling. Quota sampling is nothing but improved version of strata sampling. So in stratified sampling, the cost of taking random samples from individual strata is often so expensive that interviewers are simply given quota to be filled from different strata. So stratas you fix, from each one, okay, these many samples are going to be filled. So from each quota, okay, you are going to collect two samples. So it is a improved version of a stratified sampling. Next one, multi-stage sampling. This is further development of idea of the cluster sampling. So here, each strata, again, you are going to divide it into smaller groups or clusters. And from each cluster, okay, few samples are going to be collected. The next point is sequential sampling. So in a sequence, in an order, like specific order, you fix it. So according to that order, you are going to collect the samples. So this is somewhat a complex sample design where the ultimate size of the sample is not fixed. So out of this 100 samples I'm going to collect, it is not fixed. Depending upon what amount of data you are getting and whether useful data you are getting or no, on that you are changing the sample, total number of samples. The next point is collecting the data. So data can be collected in many ways. Simply by observation, you can collect data. Through personal interviews or through personal floating questionnaire, you can collect. Or through telephonic interviews, you can collect data. Or by regular, these days, through Google Forms, we are collecting the data. You ask few questionnaire, you float quizzes, then collect the data. Or through schedules, like suppose for students or some office people, if you are taking, then you schedule it like these many people from this section, we are going to collect the samples. So like this, by scheduling also you can collect the samples or data. Next one is execution of the project. So for executing any project, one has to select appropriate tool and then have to begin with the actual execution or implementation of the work. That is like how we select the algorithms. Like that, either you have to select a particular algorithm once you collect the data, give the data to the algorithm and see the results. So once you collect those results, now you analyze this data, the results, whatever you have obtained. So requires a number of closely related operations such as establishment of categories, coding, editing, tabulation. So all these, once it is done, basically for analysis of data, you require all this kind of a thing. Suppose I want to analyze the, like, all the student class for a specific subject, how many marks they have scored. So I have to tabulate first, like how many subjects they have and how many marks they have scored. So I have to tabulate the number of students. Then accordingly, for as per my need, I have to design a table. Then I have to make entry of these results. Again, if I want to split, like whether the internals they have scored more or SCE exam they have scored more, or they are interested more in course activity or hands-on projects, or they are interested in theoretical subjects. These things, for that I need to tabulate. So analysis of the work after tabulation is generally based on computation of various percentages, coefficients, etc. by applying various well-defined statistical formulae. Next one is, after you tabulate, hypothesis testing. So you carry out various tests. So there are good number of tests that you will be studying in your 4th unit, that is chi-square test, t-test, ANOVA, whatever you have done. All those tests come under this category. So once you test it, get the results, then interpretation you do, conclusions you present, results and conclusions you present. Once this work is over, you start writing your report. This report has to be presented, written properly, and it will undergo several corrections. Then it should be presented to the committee for approval. So after this, the evaluation takes place. So this is basically, these are the steps involved in research process.